Welcome to episode 92 of our Sperduti Fitness podcast. I'm your host, Brian. I'm here with my co-host, Beth. Before we jump into today's podcast, Coach Beth's going to take us through a few announcements.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. And before we get into tonight's topic, we wanted to let you guys know, of course, the Sperduti Fitness 12-week transformation challenge is open. And we wanted to offer you guys an extension to Saturday, January 6th. The enrollment is open. We had so many people join, and you know what? I wanted to make room for a few more. So this challenge, you guys, we're giving away a $1,000 grand prize to our transformation winner. This is the first transformation program to combine fitness and nutrition education. So head on over to the Sperduti Fitness Facebook page and click on the 12-week transformation link, or you can access it through the Sperduti Fitness app. And you can also visit our website, www.sperdutifitness.com, to get yourself enrolled. Grab a friend, grab your mom, grab your dad, grab your cousin, grab your husband, get yourself enrolled, and let's start those transformations. Now, let's talk to tonight's hot topic guest.
All right, on episode 92 today, we have registered dietitian Rachel Simson. Rachel, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all.
We kind of the year.
I know we had a podcast before the podcast.
I know.
First
one of the year.
Like always,
right?
I know.
Like always.
So with the new year and everybody with, New Year's resolutions, and one of the resolutions is always to lose weight. We had a few questions we wanted to run through with you, and you can give your insight on each topic to kind of give people a better understanding of how to approach weight loss in the new year. And these are questions that Coach Beth and I have actually had from clients that we've already answered a couple of these, so maybe they'll listen to you. So
okay, we could try.
One of the biggest questions we always get when it comes to weight loss is, should I stop eating carbohydrates?
No. So this is I don't know why carbs still get a bad rap. Like, come on, we're in 2024 now. Like, can we just know that carbs provide us with fuel? So obviously we need carbs for brain function. The numbers, I think 125 grams a day at least for proper brain function. And here we are, people recommending keto, which essentially is less than 50 grams of carb a day. So carbs provide us with energy. They also allow us to store some fluid in our body. They obviously, like I just said, give us energy. So I think carbs are really important. They also give us nutrients. So when we think of carbs, we think of things like whole grains, fruits and vegetables. We think of beans and legumes. We think of dairy products, and all of those things also provide nutrients. So when we're looking at fruits and vegetables, we have fiber. When we're looking at whole grains, we have fiber and vitamins and minerals. And when we look at dairy products, we have protein, we have probiotics, we have vitamin D, we have calcium. So I think when we're thinking of removing carbs, we're also removing very healthy things from our diet. I also think that it's not sustainable. So I think that's the biggest thing when we talk about like removing a food group or a certain food from our diet. You have to think of it long term. Removing carbs completely from your diet, is that sustainable? That means if you go to a party, and obviously, our lives revolve around food, then you can never have a cookie. You can never have a piece of cake. You could never have a piece of pizza. And so I think we have to look at that and say, is this lifestyle sustainable and maintainable? And it's most likely not. And if that's the case, then no, I would not recommend it. And that's really one of the red flags of a fad diet. So no, I don't think we should remove carbohydrates. I think they should be part of meals and snacks throughout the day. And yeah, I think there's better carbs than others, but I don't think that we need to remove any of them.
And I think that's one thing that all of us with our clients are really trying to teach is the importance of watching that fiber intake to make sure that you're getting that appropriate amount of carbohydrates to fit your individual needs. Because they are, like you said, you hit every one of those nail on the head with the benefits of carbohydrates, which I don't think many people actually know the amount of benefits that carbohydrates provide our bodies. So I'm glad that you hit on each one of those topics right there.
Right.
And you did mention one of our favorite words, which is protein, because let's talk about it. Protein is the king of our macronutrients. So a lot of times we'll hear our clients say, well, I'm not really a big fan of eating meat. So how can I increase my protein if I am not a meat eater?
Yeah, so protein is very important. I think over the last year, it got a lot of attention. I think this year is going to be more the year of fiber, which is also great. I mean, that's great that we can bring light into that even more. But protein keeps us satisfied. It gives us that feeling of satiety. So I can't tell you how many times the majority of my clients come in and I'm like, all right, let's do a quick food recall. And they had a bagel and butter for breakfast. Like that's or no breakfast. Okay. And then all of a sudden lunch comes and they're like, well, I had a salad with just some dressing on it to, keep light on the calories. And then they came home at 4 and ate their entire house. And I'm like, you need to get some protein into your day to keep you full and satisfied throughout the day. And really going over the amount of protein that I want people to eat out. Like they're like, oh, I don't know if I could do that, especially in meat form. And I get it. Beef, pork, chicken, fish, typically we could see that at lunch and dinner, but then when we try to work on their breakfast meal, they really do struggle trying to get protein at breakfast. I think that's probably the hardest meal to get it at, just because we're most likely not eating that beef, pork, chicken, or fish at breakfast. So I think things like Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, maybe even like a protein powder or like a meal replacement or a protein pre-made drink is also beneficial. We could do things like for like legumes or beans, things like that. They also contain some carbs. So just know that. They're not going to be like those plant-based options like legumes and beans and like the tofu and things like that. They're not going to be as high in protein as some of the meats comparable to calories, but you're still getting some protein source. And maybe you do half plant-based, half, animal-based protein to kind of mix it up to get a mixture. So you're not just doing all animal-based protein. But I really do like people to utilize, I myself utilize at least 1 to 2 scoops of a protein powder a day, because there's no way I'm getting up to 35 grams of protein a day without using protein powder or like a pre-made drink, like a Fairlife or like a Premier Protein or something like that. There's just no way I can. And then, we have the cheeses. Those are also another way, but then we have to kind of equal out like eggs, another thing. How much fat am I getting from those additional products? Typically some of those animal products like the cheeses and the eggs could also contain some fat. So we need to kind of make sure that we're not overdoing on the calories from getting the protein from those other sources.
And that's why working with a fitness professional and a health professional is so beneficial to learn how to take those strategies on.
Exactly. And I think sometimes just like talking it out with a client, and that's why I never really like to just hand out generic meal plans, because when someone comes to me, I'm like, what are you typically doing? I'm like, okay, let's keep working with maybe your bagel and butter, but maybe let's do half a bagel and then add some protein to it. So we're still incorporating the foods you like, but we're adding protein in. I think a lot of people don't even know the difference between a protein, a carb, and a fat. Like they don't know the macronutrients, and that's okay, because that's what we're here to teach you. But it's just they really don't know the general basic nutrition, and which is so important. But that's why they should go to a professional and not just grab a meal plan from online or do some sort of crazy fad diet challenge.
Yeah, that's big too.
I feel like, Brian, that's why when people do come to us and say, can you please write me a diet plan? I just want a diet plan. Well, no, there's so much more that goes into it than just putting something down on a piece of paper for you to follow.
You don't do that? I tell people cat food and cantaloupe, like just cat food and cantaloupe 3 times a day.
There you go.
No, I'm just kidding.
We're just going to sell that, market it right there.
But I know, right? Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's it. Remember we talked about giving people Reese's Pieces and putting them in a caloric deficit and be like, no, they're magic weight loss pills.
Yeah, right? There you go. That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
I'm sold.
But it's
Peanut
true though, because
butter.
I think a lot of people do just go on to, especially in the age of social media, they just go onto their favorite influencer's page and this is what I eat in a day, and they're like, I'm gonna do that. And it's like, I don't know if you want to do that because you don't have a basic understanding of nutrition. You know, I think that's what a lot of society is just missing in general, just a basic understanding of nutrition.
Right. And I think too, it's, yes, they're missing that, but then sometimes when the professionals explain this basic nutrition to them, they don't believe it. And
I agree.
It's very frustrating and hard for sometimes people to bring it back to the basics and for them to believe that it really is very basic. And I don't want to say easy, but you know, it's very basic, but they want it to be hard because they think it needs to be hard. But you know, and it takes time. And I think that part with the basic part of it does take time. And that's another thing they don't want, is they just want that instant gratification. We've talked about that millions of times, is that that's all people want.
Yeah. And I think sometimes as well, people put more of an emphasis on the restrictive. They're proud of how restrictive they were getting there, not even getting there. So it's like, if you tell somebody, well, you know, hey, I lost 20 pounds. Me too. What'd you do? I didn't eat any carbs. Oh, I still ate carbs and lost. Yeah, but I didn't eat any carbs. I'm like, well, that okay. Here's a scratch and sniff sticker.
Right.
I don't know what to tell you, but but again, they think it has to be this difficult thing. I'm like, it's really not that hard. But again, though, that's from years and years and years of bad information as well. So it's, you know what I mean?
Right. Right. I know. And in some ways, like, you know, yes, we're doing something for social media right now, but in some ways I'm like, please make it go away, because it's very hard to be, you know, a nutrition or fitness professional nowadays, because you have all these influencers that are just throwing random stuff and just making people buy it or believe it. And so it is very, very difficult these days to kind of erase what people have viewed or think is right.
Yeah. And with that too, you know, when, you know, people often ask too, okay, I want to lose weight. What supplement should I start using? Or should I, you know, get into detoxes or stuff like that? Is there any supplementation or things like that that you would say people need to use when they're starting to try to lose weight?
That's a huge one. So again, I can't tell you how many clients that come to me and they have a list of supplements that they're on. And I'm like, and they're like, you know, it's all for gut health, but their gut is totally ruined. You know what I mean? And I'm like, it's right. It's probably half the stuff that you're taking. So I typically do not recommend any supplements unless you're deficient in something. So I always do like people to, and I have 12 years of a clinical dietitian background. So I am, you know, I'm used to looking at labs, recommending supplements, recommending things like that. So I do ask for people's blood work to look at that. And I ask people to get blood work at least every year. So I ask them to get, obviously, you know, an add-on of vitamin D and a thyroid typically. And those are pretty much the normal ones I have people get. We look at cholesterol, if there's any other issues. Obviously, if people are coming to me with diabetes concerns, obviously we'll look at A1C, glucose, things like that. But unless you're deficient in something, I don't recommend something. Vitamin D is probably the biggest one that I probably would recommend, even not looking at a lab, just because we live in Buffalo. And usually it's just, you know, 1,000 to 2,000 international units of vitamin D a day. Obviously, if you're deficient, it would be prescribed for a little while, and then, you know, kind of like a baseline of 1,000 to 2,000 international units once you get up to that within normal limits. I typically like to see it around 60. You know, the lower end is about 30. But then, you know, I do look at cholesterol, and I think sometimes labs like that are good ways of non-scale victories for people too. So I like to look at that. But within every other supplement, really, there's not a need for it. Obviously, if there's a thyroid issue, that's prescribed by your doctor. Any other supplements on top of that, I mean, if you want to call protein powder a supplement, fine. You know, creatine could be a whole nother discussion, you know, on top of that. But I think those are more of like fitness supplemental types where I think people come to me with things like probiotics. They come on like fish oils and things like that. And there is a time and a place for those things. Like, say there is maybe a history of cholesterol, elevated cholesterol, and we've tried everything. We've tried diet, exercise. Maybe there's a family history. Well, maybe let's try a fish oil. It's not going to hurt. But I think some of these supplements that people or influencers, let's say, promote, some of them can be dangerous. So like when COVID happened, everyone was prescribing zinc and vitamin D. Well, vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin. So when taken in supplemental form in high doses, it can become toxic. So people all of a sudden are taking, 10,000 international units a day, thinking that this is going to help me fight off COVID, help my immune system. Well, that's not okay. And so, A, D, E, and K are fat soluble vitamins. Then you have your B's and C's and, all your other water soluble vitamins that really you're just going to pee out if you don't use them. So I think it does depend on the person, their goals, and if there's any labs that, are altered. But other than that, first glance, there's nothing that I just put every single client on just because of a supplement. Especially like the probiotic one is huge with gut health recently. And actually, I kind of drive people away from the probiotic and actually say, let's go off of it and let's increase fiber, increase water, increase exercise, like try those natural forms before we go towards a probiotic or even a prebiotic.
That's definitely a conversation that I have almost on a daily basis, is a client asking, about, well, what supplements should I start? Ryan, you hit that right on the head when you brought up that topic. And it's that conversation of, well, let's really take a look at what you're eating and what you're consuming right now, what your habits are. Let's see where your fiber is coming from and make those adjustments there, because it's so important to start with those whole food sources, because that's basically where the most natural, like you just said, Rachel, the most natural way to recover, repair your body and your own gut health. That's right on.
And do you think people have a major issue with Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think people just have an issue of jumping from step 1 to step 9 a lot of the times when it comes to nutrition and weight loss, where, like you said, hey, before you start jumping on all these supplements, let's just do a food recall. Let's see what you're eating. Let's take out this for now. Let's take a look at this. How much fiber you're getting before you start jumping onto these supplements. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that takes time. And that's what people don't want to do, is the time that it's going to take to say, let's try eating, 25 grams of fiber a day before we add in, powdered greens and fiber gummy, So it's really, like that takes time. And sometimes it takes, prepping and things like that. So, and then also they see these influencers who are like promoting these products. Like people are like, oh my gosh, I love my powdered greens. They changed my life. Did they? You know what I mean? Like, or are you trying to sell them? Because I can't see a powder, just the powder changing your life, So, and that's like, they just think that that's a quick fix. So yeah, things take time and they don't want it to take time. It's going to be like, all right, you have to not drink alcohol for, a little while to see how good you really feel. You have to be hydrated for, more than 2 days. You have to work out for more than 2 weeks to see a difference. So those types of things people don't want to do. They just want that quick fix.
So this goes into this other question we do get a lot. And Rachel, I'm sure you have heard this one too. People tend to always say, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I just have a problem sticking to it. So do you have any tips for people that are coming across those obstacles?
Yeah. So I would say I think a lot of people need accountability. So whether that be a trainer or a dietitian to consistently meet with, to whether do check-ins, I think accountability for a lot of people is needed. I think direction from those people that you are checking in with too is really beneficial. I think a lot of people do not find that motivation until they start seeing change. And I think sometimes change takes time, again, like I was saying, and it sometimes it takes longer than they want it to. So sometimes I go with not just one like victory. So like not just the scale victory. And I think that's what a lot of people like to see is that scale change. And I think, yes, that's very motivating, but I think we need to go off other things like, okay, let's have a scale victory, a lab victory. So maybe we're working on getting our A1C down. And then maybe we have a how you're feeling victory, or how are your pants fitting? Because the scale could remain the same, but your pants are fitting better. So I think we need to have, or even a picture, maybe before and after pictures. So I think sometimes having more than one indicator of progress is good. But I think having that accountability from someone else, and it doesn't have to be a professional. I mean, if you want it to be your trainer or your dietitian, great, but it could be a friend. Sometimes just like, hey, did you do the workout today? Because some people just don't have that inner motivation. But I think once they start seeing a little bit of progress, then that just keeps motivating to do more. But if you're doing it the right way, like we promote, yeah, it's going to take a little time. And that's where we have to just keep reinforcing it will happen, but you have to stick with it. So like the January 1st, like I think it's great to kind of, people do jumpstart, but I don't think that should be the only time of the year for people to jumpstart. But if maybe that's, a full month of them to kind of start seeing results, great. Okay. Like a lot of people start the challenges then. Okay, well, let's hope that you stick with it because you really start seeing changes. So yeah, it is hard. A lot of internal motivation, a lot of people don't have it. And that's why a lot of people can't work out from home. And they have to go to a gym. I have tons of clients that have a full gym in their basement and they don't use it because they don't have that internal motivation. Or they go grocery shopping every week and they have a fridge full of food, but they're not prepping it.
Right.
So yeah.
And piggybacking off of that too, would you suggest that maybe at some times that clients or individuals should see a therapist to help them over those hurdles?
I love therapists. I think everyone needs a therapist. I think especially our generation, I think we all grew up with, disordered eating. And to some extent, I'd say the majority of us, let's put it that way, through all, whether your mother was on a diet or there was disordered eating in the house, or you grew up trying diets. I mean, look at all these diets, over the past, 20, 30 years, like a lot. I think there's like a number, I think it was like the average 40-year-old or something like that. It was on like 60 diets at one point. Like that's crazy.
Wow.
So to think about some number like that. So I think a therapist is huge to start rebuilding a relationship with food. And that's, really talking about that food is fuel, but we need to work on like hunger cues and fullness cues and knowing that all food is okay in moderation. And I think it's huge. And I think it's huge for, if we talk about, weight loss injectables, I think that's also a part of like a multidisciplinary approach to your health. I think there needs to be like a trainer, a dietitian, a therapist, maybe even a physical therapist if there is, any injuries or things like that. Like we don't just, like one person can't be all of these things. And I think these influencers are trying to be all of these people, and you can't. I'm a dietitian. I can't be a plumber. You know what I mean? So you need to do the job that you're made to do. And I think a therapist needs to be involved in this multidisciplinary approach to our health and to weight loss and to fitness.
I think that's something that's going to be very big going forward, which we've actually talked about a bunch before. It's like a callback to
Yes.
Rachel back in the day when we had everybody meeting and we had like a bunch
Yes.
of yeah, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a callback.
Yes.
Because we recognized that a long time ago. There's no way I can be everything. You know what I mean? And it's really nice when you could have some sort of communication between everybody. And that's a whole nother topic, but between the trainer, the dietitian, the therapist, the PT, the whoever, the chiropractor going, stay away from this, touch on this. Okay, here's what we talked about. This is the information then that gives you a better idea of how to work with that individual, because everybody's different and everybody responds differently to different approaches.
And that's a well-rounded approach.
Absolutely.
You have all of that wrapped around you. What a support team.
Yeah. I would love to have like a centralized, like Buffalo, like downtown Buffalo, like this big building. You walk in and there's like 10 different offices, and each office like has like offices off of it, but it's like, okay, Sperduti Fitness. And then
here we go. We just started another one.
Man.
And then, so you're walking into this building that is just, everything is there that you need. Maybe even like a little cafeteria that maybe even like has
Oh my
cooking
gosh.
shows that teaches you, you know what I mean? All these things. Like this would be right.
Yes.
So it's
Oh, look
Well,
at us.
I'll start the GoFundMe as soon as we get off the podcast
Okay.
for those, because
Oh my gosh, it's
that
gonna
is
be
a
the best
genius
center in the
idea, though.
world. Like,
That
yes.
Right.
like that is a complete genius idea, and I never understood. I mean, I get why it doesn't work. Like, I understand, but like as a trainer who's been doing it for a long time, it's like, why don't we have those things available? You know what I mean?
Right.
Why don't we have a one-stop shop where you can walk in and meet with 3 or 4 different people who can share notes to a point?
Right.
Like I said, to give you a better understanding of individual cooking classes, I think would be just, oh my gosh, yeah, we're gonna do that.
Look at us. So when our clients are looking, not necessarily even our clients, but before someone works with us, they're looking, they're searching. I need, I want to start this weight loss phase for myself. How can they look for something that's sustainable? And are there certain red flags that they should be avoiding?
Yeah. So red flags for obviously fad diets are going to be something that is instant gratification. So anything that's going to, say that you're going to lose more than 1 to 2 pounds a week, that's not going to be sustainable and lifelong. Okay. So it's going to be, a slower progress. Other red flags is removing an entire food or food group. Okay. So things like removing complete carbs or removing sugar. So, we still need to enjoy all foods in our diet, because when we do restrict things, so like when people are like, I don't need any sugar. And that's another thing is, which I'm going to go off on a little tangent. Like I had a client come to me and was like, I don't need any sugar. And I'm like, natural sugar or added sugar. And he didn't know the difference. Okay. So like, that's another educational piece of like, hey, but like, we need to know that red flags of saying removing food groups or certain foods, promoting no exercise. So I know that there's programs out there that promote such low calorie diets. It's a very popular one.
Ideal You.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't think of the name.
I was just talking about this
like,
today. I was just talking about this today.
They're like, you can't exercise because your caloric intake is so low. And I'm like, well, that's not okay. Like, that doesn't even sound normal. Like, that doesn't sound right. And to think that people are okay with that and think that's okay, that's not okay. I think you need to look for someone who is, credentialed and has, possibly even reviews from other clients that can say, hey, this is what I did, have made great progress. I think talking to them, but I think looking for the red flags of say, this is a fad diet, it's not going to work. But also looking for things that are sustainable for life. Like I said, the no carb situation, not sustainable. The carnivore diet, can you eat, meat for the rest of your life like that? Probably not. So we need to kind of think of things like that when we're looking to start diets or changes in our lifestyle.
Professional.
Listen to a professional. Yeah. But again, you know what it is? I say a lot of it with these extreme plans is like putting lipstick on a pig. They make it look so cool through social media. And they're showing you these results, and it's like a cool template that they're using, and you're like, this looks awesome. And you're like, you can't sustain that long term. You can't. Like, it's not real.
Right. And I think a lot of people that, do come to me, they're like, I've tried everything. And I don't think any of them have actually tried anything long enough, because then they see something else on social media. So they're doing something for 1 week and then they're like, this isn't working. Well, it's only been a week. So then they try something new. Then that's not working for a week. So they never really are doing something consistently for long enough to see those results, because they're all over the place. Or they try to do something for 2 weeks and they don't see results. So they're like, I give up. So it's frustrating, but I think people just need to stick with something and really like be consistent and be okay with slower progress.
And, speaking of being okay with slower progress, and we talked about this a little bit already, but how can people measure success outside of the scale?
So like I was talking about before, I think blood work is a great indicator. Especially with my private practice, I work with a lot of diabetics. So I think using like A1C, which is measured every 3 months, is a great progress indicator, or cholesterol, you can measure that every 3 to 6 months, is a great way. Is it decreasing? Am I making changes that are really affecting my blood markers? Another way is we could do pictures, before and after pictures. I think sometimes we see ourselves every day in the mirror, so you're not really seeing a difference. I think if you have, and I know you guys do a lot of progress pictures to kind of see, don't you? Right? Yeah. So I think pictures are a great way to see some progress without seeing on a scale, because you have to think, okay, especially for you guys, like there's weightlifting involved, and I want weightlifting involved in my clients too. Well, you might not see a huge shift on the scale if you're doing all this weightlifting, but you might see a change in the way you look. I also feel like you could use a piece of clothing, and I say, maybe take a pair of jeans or a pair of pants that you never really wear, so you're not constantly stretching them out, and you use those, say, put them on in a month or 2 months and see how they feel. I also like people to document how they feel from day to day. So like, do you have more energy? Are you sleeping better? How is your mood? How's your skin look? All those types of things. But, a lot of us are not in tune with our own body, so we don't really even think about these things. How are your bowel movements? I mean, that's another thing too, is, if someone comes to me and they're like, I only have a bowel movement every 3 to 5 days. And I'm like, well, let's work on getting some more fiber. Like, now I'm having a bowel movement every day. Okay, great. You got more water in, you got more steps in, all these things help towards getting that goal. Like, so sometimes it's not just the scale weight. A lot of people, come to me for other outside ways, and that's, I think, other ways to project progress.
I think that's so important as fitness professionals, health professionals, is to be able to really point out what we should be focusing on, and taking that whole mental view of the scale as a success or a failure tool, because it's not what it is. It's just a tiny tool in that whole bigger picture of that healthy lifestyle. And paying attention to all those other markers are so important. So important.
Yeah. Yeah. And even for like you guys, like, say it's maybe lifting heavier, it might be, I think that's a huge indicator too, is, hey, my lifts are better. I can lift more, I can lift heavier, I can run longer, whatever that is.
Right.
It's going to, the non-scale victories are going to depend, I think, on your goals, but those are all other ways to determine progress.
Now, Rachel, we know you have a little growing family around your house over there. So for all of our viewers that have a family that, may not be as supportive if they would like, how can we suggest some ways to help families get on board with healthier eating?
So I think first of all, you need to ask the family members like what they want. So I would say, like, sit down on a Thursday, Friday, everyone talk about what they want. Now I get it. Like, my kids are 3.5 and a year old. So like, they're not talking to me about what they want to eat, because it's basically like Hershey bars and granola bars. So, but, typically sitting down with my husband and planning out the meals of what do you want? Because it has to be a collaborative approach, because you can't just make something and expect everyone else to eat it. I also feel like we need to support each other in these relationships, to be like, hey, my husband needs to allow me to have some time to set aside to prep meals, work out, and it needs to be vice versa. Because I think, I see a lot of people being like, well, I don't have time to do this. Well, do you not have time because that's a whole different.
Oh, yes.
So I think there needs to be like dual support in that relationship. I think too, like older kids, maybe they can also help. So saying like, hey, let's try a brand new vegetable every week. I think new things have to be tried. And I, like, last year I did a CSA, which I loved. I did, it was like an 18-week CSA, which I got new vegetables like every week. Some of them, like, I would never even buy on my own, but it like made me make new recipes and use those vegetables and try new things. So I think sometimes too is just, maybe even going to the store and buying one new fruit or vegetable a week and having your family try it. Maybe you all try it together. I also say, like, sitting down to dinner and talking every day was helpful too. I think families nowadays don't do that. So I think that answered your question, but I'm not sure.
Absolutely. I think
good.
those were great tips, because I know, I have a big family, and it was kind of like, how do I incorporate healthy eating for my family? And it was just like you said, I involved them in every aspect, and it didn't matter how old they were. My kids were cooking in my kitchen, whether they enjoyed the meal. I let them pick things out, and I let them help have a say in what we were doing, because we all know that our kids, our spouses, sometimes they will put those stoppers up and say, I'm not doing any of this. I think one of the funniest swaps is when people start to swap out like a spaghetti squash instead of a whole noodle. And they're like, oh, I will never eat that again. I'm like, you know what? It's a mind over matter thing, because when you have that in front of you and it's got the sauce on it, it is so good. Like you start to your palate will take some time to change, but it definitely does adapt. And that's something that I like to reiterate to my clients that have children, is that their palate may be used to a specific way something tastes right now. So it will take time for them to adjust to something different. And it happens. They adjust. My kids are living proof of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And they say 12 to 15 times you have to put that food in front of them. One time is not going to work. So just keep doing it. And if, maybe they touch it, great. Small progress. Saying that same with kids is like the same thing. It's like, so yeah.
And as far as grocery shopping as well, can you give people any tips on how to grocery shop?
Plan is, so that's a huge thing. So most people don't have a plan, and I get a lot of questions. When do you start planning? So I do the majority of my grocery shopping on Saturdays or Sundays. And I start planning on typically like a Thursday. So I always say you need to kind of I should actually have some sort of template that people could download, because I do the same thing on just like a plain white, seriously, I do it on like a plain white piece of paper, like old school. I write it out. I'm like, okay, I write out Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then Saturday is kind of like my free for all day. Not that I eat, it's not like a cheat day, but it's just like I kind of eat leftovers or whatever. But then I write lunch, breakfast, and then usually snacks. So the days I categorize what I'm going to be making for dinner. And then I write out what I'm going to make for lunch and then breakfast. Because typically I meal prep 4 lunches, 8 when my husband is home. He's deployed now. So when he is home, I make, 8 lunches. Because Friday is typically a lunches of just leftover. But I try to make meals that incorporate items that I know are going to be left over from one meal to use in another. So there's less waste. And this requires a lot of thinking. It does. But I think you need to, once you start kind of doing it, you get used to it, and you get used to the meals that your family likes. And maybe you have a list of dinners that your family really likes. And you kind of not do them on repeat, but have a list that, okay, well, this week is stuffed peppers. And then we're also going to do, maybe spaghetti. And then you have a list of breakfast ideas you like, and a list of snack ideas you like, and a list of lunches you like. And you kind of just go through it each week and make a list. And then I go to my pantry, my fridge, and my freezer, and I look to see what I have for all these recipes. And then I cross off, I don't need that because I have it. And then from there, I categorize another sheet of paper of dried and canned. And then I categorize dairy or, fridge items, proteins, and then produce. And then I know, because they're typically all together in the grocery store, so that I'm grabbing them at that one location, putting in my cart. And then I usually do have a prep day. I know people are weird about prep days and having only one. So I tell a lot of my clients, I'm like, you have to set aside time. You have to. And if you don't, you will fail. And so I'm like, if you don't like eating the meal you made on Sunday, on Thursday, then you need to have 2 prep days. But then that would cut your time in half. Or if you don't like eating the same thing, that second prep day, you make a separate meal. And I am also, really big on prepared meals too, meaning like 95 Nutrition or, balanced body. I don't see anything wrong with utilizing those things if you need a little bit of help. I'm also big on like meal planning with convenient food. So like things like rotisserie chickens or frozen vegetables or frozen fruit. And I think people think that those are not okay or not healthy. I think we need to be okay with some convenience intertwined into our meal planning and meal prepping, because if we don't, you will fail, because it's going to be, you cannot cook for an hour every night. You can't, it's not realistic. So it takes, I think planning and thinking are the biggest things, and coming up with a plan. And again, this is talking with your spouse, this is talking with your kids, or thinking about, hey, Jimmy has soccer on Wednesday. We need a quick meal. You know, like these kids in their sports. I mean, my kids are young, but it is crazy for a lot of parents. Like, you guys know, like, so it's like, we need a meal. I need to make a crock pot full of chicken to have so that they can make salads or wraps. And that's done for, that night, because I know if we don't, then we're going to be going through the McDonald's drive-through. Right. So it's planning and thinking ahead of time, which no one does because we're just living day to day, but you can't do that.
I agree. And I feel like that's a strategy go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah. I do post meal plan, like meal ideas for the entire week, every Saturday or Sunday. I post them and they're out there for people to utilize. You can flip flop at whatever you want, along with a grocery list. And I'm debating and thinking about working out some sort of app that would be like, hey, okay, my recipes are in this app and you can drag and drop, like, okay, Sunday, Monday, dragging and dropping, like, I need a less than 20-minute meal or whatever it is. And then it produces like a grocery list. So we'll see if that plays out.
Awesome.
So
we'll be setting up the GoFundMe for that as well after the podcast.
Thanks.
Oh my gosh. So with all these clients, everybody's, they're setting these goals and they're doing everything that they're supposed to do. Now they ask this question: how long is it going to take me to reach my weight loss goal? Am I going to be there in 30 days? 30 days, right?
Right. So obviously, right. Yeah. I ask them what their goal weight, because typically it's the weight most of the time. What's your goal weight? And they tell me a number and I'm like, okay. I usually cut that in half or make it a third. I said, this is your new goal weight. Because I'm like, 280 and a goal of 150. Come on, we need to start smaller. So we need to do small right. And this happens a lot because they just have this set number in their head. And so, we do small incremental growth. So 20 to 30 pounds at a time. If it's that much, obviously it's going to be different from client to client, because if someone comes to me and they're really slightly overweight and they're like, I want to be this weight. And I'm like, oh, this is going to take you even longer because I only want you losing like a half a pound a week. But typically the majority of my people, no more than, really, I say 1 pound a week. I mean, there's no need to go any more than that. I think a lot of people, if they're putting something into my fitness pal, they all of a sudden, pack in, I want to lose 2 pounds a week or whatever that is. And I'm like, I typically say, put a half a pound in my fitness pal. Say, I want to lose a half a pound a week, and then go from there. Because when we try to go for the 2 or more pounds a week, then you're basically starving yourself, and then you're binging and you're ruining it all. So typically I say, if we're kind of going for 1-ish pounds a week, we're looking at about 5 pounds a month, which is slow. I mean, so if we're looking to lose 25 pounds on someone, that's 5 months down the road.
Right.
But everyone's goals are different. But when we think of like fad diets, which really catch everyone, so like a ketogenic diet typically averages 7 to 8 pounds weight loss in the first week, which is extremely drastic. But then you don't keep that off. Do you know what I mean? And the majority of that is water weight, which people don't understand. So typically like no more than 2 pounds is like my upper limit. And again, it's going to depend on what weight they're coming into me as.
Right.
So if you could break it down into three things people should keep in mind when setting up weight loss goals, what would they be? Your top 3 key points.
you need to be consistent because the progress is going to be slower than you'd like. Okay. There's going to be changes you have to make. I think that's, you have to stick with them. And I think, I guess consistency, change, and I don't even know what I would say for the last one, because I could go all down the road of saying like, get your protein in, get your fiber in. So you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I could go with all those. So yeah, I would say just be patient, but be consistent and hit all your markers of like sleep, stress, nutrition, fitness, and fluid.
I think those are great tips.
Absolutely.
And speaking of fad diets and speaking of, so you got to tackle it. It's the elephant in the room in 2024. And so, okay, we've been doing this a long time, and there always seems to be certain types of weight loss supplements or drugs and things like that that are on the market that have their pros and cons. And one of them right now is Ozempic. So could you give the people listening a brief breakdown of what Ozempic actually is?
Yeah. So Ozempic is marketed as a diabetic medication. Okay. And then so we'll go back. We'll start at what they are. They are GLP-1 agonists. So they are basically a class of drugs that, or I should say, they mimic a hormone in our body called the glucagon-like peptide 1. And what this hormone does is it inhibits our appetite in our brain. So really, these drugs cause us to have a feeling of fullness. They cause us early satiety. They delay our gastric emptying. So they slow our gut down. Okay. So the goal of these drugs is to make us not feel as hungry or fuller faster. Okay. So you eat less. So you eat less calories, which could also be done without a drug, but we can't control that, which is why I think, which I'll get to at the end, which is why I think a therapist is huge with these drugs, but they're not used, but we'll get back to that. So anyway, Ozempic and Wegovy, so they're basically the same drug. They're classified under semaglutide. So these are just the generic names, the Ozempic and Wegovy. So they're the same drug, but you're going to hear them prescribed for different things. So Ozempic is used for diabetes. Okay, it's been on the market for years. Wegovy is marketed as a weight loss drug. So, so what's going to happen with the Ozempic, so it's used to weight loss and control blood glucose levels. With Wegovy, to be prescribed Wegovy, you have to have, there's two classifications. You have to have a BMI of over 30, just plain outright 30. Now, we can get into the whole BMI thing, but we won't. Or you have to have a BMI of over 27 with one or more comorbidities. So it would be, you have a BMI of 27 with hypertension, you have a BMI of 27 with high cholesterol. So any of those, obesity related comorbidities that would qualify you to get prescribed Wegovy for obesity. So the issue is now we have a new drug. So that is, it's classified under tirzepatide, which is Mounjaro. So Mounjaro is now, it wasn't like an off-label used for weight loss. So it was still very similar to the Ozempic and Wegovy, but it was off-label used for weight loss. But recently, over the past, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, it got approved by the FDA as Zepbound. So Zepbound is Mounjaro, but it's just the new FDA approved weight loss. So again, they still have the same. So we have Ozempic, Wegovy together, and then we have Mounjaro and Zepbound, which are the same thing. All do the same thing basically. Okay. And so what's happening is, They are one injectable a week, and it's a titrated up formula. So it's like you start at the lowest dose and you titrate up. Typically, they're all titrated differently. So like Mounjaro versus Wegovy, they're different. The max dose is different in both. And it would take about, I think it takes like 4 to 5 weeks to get up to like this max titrate dose. If you try to do it too fast, people have like really bad side effects, which we can get into too. But what the goal of them is to, like I said, is to give you that feeling of fullness. So people eat half of the meals they were, or, you know, they're now eating 1,200 calories because they're just not hungry and they get full. Or if they try to eat more, they get sick. And it's essentially the same thing as like gastric bypass. Like that's the goal of it. And so when we look at like gastric bypass results, most of them were like 25 to 30% weight loss with gastric bypass surgeries, where these are showing Ozempic and Wegovy are showing like 15-ish% weight loss, where Mounjaro and Zepbound are showing more like 22.5% weight loss once you hit your top. And so the thing is once we hit the top, nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Go off of it, your appetite comes back. So, and my concern with them, so let's go over the pros. Let's start with the pros, okay? And then we'll go to the cons. So the pros, I love the fact that it helps people lose weight, okay? Because if, you know, a 15% weight loss on someone could decrease obesity-related issues, okay? So that's huge. So say you are on a hypertensive medication, a statin for your cholesterol, and you're on insulin for diabetes. Okay, now this is not used for type 1. This is only type 2. So let me get that out there. So say you're on all 3 of those medications and you go on Wegovy or Ozempic. So you're probably going on Ozempic because if you have the diabetes, but all of a sudden your weight drops and your blood glucose levels, you know, normalize, and your cholesterol levels normalize and your hypertension normalize. Well, you can come off all these medications. That's great. I think that is a pro to these medications.
But now
my concern with that, right. So that's a pro. So we'll keep going with the pros. Another pro is I do feel like it could be motivating to then turn into lifestyle changes. So meaning, okay, I lost 20 pounds. I feel great. My joints feel better. I think I could walk more. I can start lifting. A little more motivating that I want to lose more weight. So I think from a motivating factor, I think that could be a great jumpstart. Okay. So I think those are my pros that I think. Okay. And then my cons with this drug is you have to be on it for life. Now, granted, okay, if you didn't go on this drug for life, you would probably still be on your statins, your hypertensive medication, your diabetic medication. So what would you rather be on, which med? But the long-term data on this is still not out there. So like, we don't know the long-term side effects. We know the short-term side effects, which, you know, we've seen pancreatitis, gallbladder issues, kidney issues, nausea, because everything is, you have that feeling of delayed gastric emptying, everything kind of sits here longer in your stomach. There is muscle loss, which is huge. Okay. And that's I think the biggest part of, I think a lot of this is people go in to get these medications and it's just like, here's your medication. There's no talk about lifestyle changes, because this is supposed to be in combination. These drugs are not supposed to just be a standalone. They need to be in combination with lifestyle changes. So we have all these people like losing this weight. We're not seeing, is this muscle mass loss or is this fat loss? Because there's no way that you know what I mean? So I think that needs to be worked out. They're also not seeing a dietitian. I have actually some clients that I work with that are on it, and I'm like, great, you're working with me. You're actually trying to use this drug in combination with a dietitian and a trainer. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's great. I also think that if we are able to eat less with this drug, but then when we go off of it, we're not, do we need some psychological help, like a therapist? Okay, why doesn't this start when we go on this drug? So historically, prior to bariatric surgery, patients had to lose weight on their own before they were even allowed to go under the knife. But here we are just passing out this injectable. I think another con is that it is an injectable once a week. Like you want to, inject yourself with a shot every week. Most people don't like that. Okay. Another con is the cost. It is becoming, so there's shortages for people who actually need it. So there's shortages of things like Ozempic for people who actually need it. And then there's cost. Some insurances are not covering. Okay. Because then we do have like people who are not supposed to be prescribed it, getting prescribed it. Okay. So, there's lots of issues. Another big issue to long-term side effect is when they did studies, they did see on the mice and the rats that they developed thyroid cancer. I highly recommend, and this was just on animals, but okay, so take it with a grain of salt. But if you have any thyroid issues, I do not recommend going on this drug. And in my opinion, I wouldn't. But we'll see what happens. I know historically the FDA approved weight loss drug Saxenda, which was, I think, 2016, actually led to some breast cancers. So just something to think about. So there's pros and cons to it. Okay. I don't know. I think if some people walking into the doctor's office and this is just getting prescribed to them first, I don't think it's appropriate. I think there needs, like we talked about earlier in our discussion, a multidisciplinary approach of we need to do some weightlifting. We need to do have a dietitian and a therapist before we just jump on a medication. Sure. I think we don't have good enough preventative care in this country. And, why are we not discussing this when the BMI is, starting to creep up? Why are we just waiting until it's too late? These drugs are also approved to give to the ages 12 and over, right. So, yes. So I also feel like,
wow.
Okay, yes, it might be an issue. Like, is there an issue with, binge eating or a food relationship issue? You need to see a therapist for sure. Yes, we know that we have really bad, cultural issues of food is everywhere. Access to food, junk food is everywhere. I think we need to work on that part. Then stop spending money on developing drugs to fight obesity. We need to prevent the cause of it. We need to help prevent, you know what I mean? And we're not doing that. We're not having preventative care. We're not providing possibly like groceries, like healthy foods, things like that. There's just junk food everywhere you go. I did a post last week. I was in Old Navy and there was a cooler full of pop and then like snacks in the checkout line. I'm like, why? This is a clothing store. So it's our atmosphere. It's, again, we're not educated on this. Like how many nutrition courses do you take in high school? None. You know what I mean? Like this needs to be important. There's a number, what was it that, and I'm going to butcher this number, but by like 2030 or 2035, like half of America is going to be obese.
That's a horrifying number.
So
it honestly is.
Right.
Yep.
And so, and I see a lot of people coming to me and I get it. Like I do have a lot of people really, really trying. They're like, I've done everything. I've, tried everything. And really, people need to sit down and really take a look at what they're doing, because I have a lot of premenopausal and menopausal women, and I get it. There are some hormonal shifts, but we can't, social media overdoes it on hormones. They're not that out of whack. Okay.
Yes,
you're not
you're
doing
right.
the things. Okay. Like you need to do the things. You're not moving as much as you used to. You're not lifting weights, and you're not eating fruits and vegetables, and you're not in a caloric deficit. That 5 ounces of wine that you're tracking is really 7. And we need to really
and you hit something.
And I don't want you tracking everything. And
when you said something about the menopausal, and this is something that I have noticed myself with a lot of my female clients of this age, is that they're not realizing that their hormonal changes are happening because the lack of calorie consumption they're actually having. So when they're not realizing that they're eating between 1,000 and 1,200 calories, that they're actually really depleting themselves of the nutrients that they need in order to support healthy hormone function. And then when we have to have that conversation of, wow, well, you're not eating enough. And then they're like, why would I eat more? I'm trying to lose weight. And just like the cycle that is out there and the misinformation. But that's definitely something that I have seen also with female clients.
Yeah. And the fact that they have lost a lot of muscle because they never weight lifted, and now, now all of a sudden it's hitting them because they haven't, and their metabolism is slowed. So you need to pick up a weight. You need to get into it. Your steps, you're not going to get by with 5,000-6,000 steps a day. Like, it's just not going to work, especially if you have a sedentary job, which the majority of us do.
Right.
You're not going to get by anymore with casually, sometimes not measuring things. Like, sometimes we have to measure things to really see. You think you're in a calorie deficit too, and sometimes you're not. So
right.
There's, it's a lot to think about when I have someone come to me
to ask for Ozempic. And I guess, to wrap that all up, if someone is considering the idea and the thought of, is Ozempic for me? Who would you say would be appropriate candidates for Ozempic?
I would say someone who is about 40 to 50 pounds overweight and is on some sort of medication that is related to obesity. So meaning like a statin or a hypertensive medication or a diabetes medication. I would say that's appropriate, but I wouldn't even say anything's appropriate as the first step is going straight to that. I would say first going to diet and lifestyle. I think diet and lifestyle factors need to be tried for at least, let's say, 3 to 6 months. Let's try it for at least 3 to 6 months. I think that needs to be tried, really tried. And that's where you need to go see a dietitian, a trainer, and a therapist all before you do this. Like, that needs to be the approach first, and say, okay, yeah, I was able to lose 15 pounds on my own in the 3 months. Okay, great. Keep going.
Right.
Don't stop. Like, why? You don't need the drug if you can keep going.
Yeah, you need to find a team. Surround yourself with a team.
Yeah. And so I think that now that if nothing works, then maybe we think about it. But I want to know why it wasn't working. Were you really doing the things? Like, there's a lot we got to look at. Like, yeah, okay, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Maybe you are so largely obese that it hurts to walk or to get around. Maybe that's the appropriate one to get things going. Like I said, to lose some weight, to have the joints feeling better, to get moving. But again, I think it's always diet and lifestyle changes need to be tried first. They really do. It's just, yeah.
I guess
we should stop following the celebrities because a celebrity has tried something. So everybody jumps on that bandwagon and is like, oh, this is the next best thing.
Well, yeah. And we have celebrities that are looking to lose 5 pounds for a wedding or an event. And that's not appropriate. And then, people are handing out these medications like it's candy, because I'm not sure like if there's kickback from people or what the deal is, but that's not the appropriate way to use them. So I think they're getting misused quite a bit right now, because they are the hot thing. And I'm curious to see now that this Zepbound is FDA approved, what is going to happen. But I do feel bad for the people who are not able to get their Ozempic for their diabetes, because it's being used by people who want to lose 5 pounds for a wedding. That's not okay.
And I guess I didn't realize too before that it's only for type 2 diabetics. That's very interesting, because we always used to look at type 2 diabetics, and I've worked with some diet, exercise, and weight loss, and now they're no longer diabetic.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So I guess it really just blew my mind. It's like, because back in the day it was like diet and exercise, but you nailed it. are you really doing what you're supposed to be doing? Or are you just going for this quick fix again in society where you're just using this drug, not making lifestyle changes? You stop using the drug, hunger increases, and now you see a weight regain, which I'm sure we're going to see now that we're in this like high Ozempic usage. A couple of years from now, or even a couple of months from now, we're going to start noticing people who have rapid weight gain post Ozempic use because they never made the lifestyle changes while on it or before using it, and never sought out a therapist and other professionals to help with like a fitness lifestyle plan.
Right. And, you know, they're just, like I said, given the drug and nothing's talked about, hey, you need to make sure you're getting enough protein. What is protein? Because essentially, if you're eating 1,200 calories a day and you're trying to get 120 grams of protein, there's not much room for many other calories. So you can't be eating the way you were eating. There's just no way. And so I think a lot of people struggle with that. I know I have some friends of mine that have emailed me or messaged me on the side asking me for advice, and they're actually struggling with trying to get food in because it decreases their appetite that much. So, but some of them are actually doing well on it to then increase physical activity. But again, they need to stick with this, you know, which once you go off of it, you know, this is what they're showing is that you will regain the weight back. Some people are saying, like some doctors are testing out, like lowering the dose back down to the starting dose and then kind of like doing like maybe instead of injectables once a week, like every other week to kind of do like a maintenance type of thing. But again, right now, I feel like, you know, no one really knows what's going to happen with a lot of these people or, you know, side effects long term or things like that. So that's also scary. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I guess we'll see.
What are some of the side effects of using Ozempic? Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah. So nausea is a big one. Constipation or diarrhea. Mostly I see constipation because it kind of slows the GI tract. So it's really slowing things down, essentially. You know what I mean? So you can see lots of constipation. Pancreatitis is a big one, gallbladder issues, kidney problems. So that's another thing. If they're not doing blood work before they put you on this medication to see how your kidney function is, I don't know how safe that is either. I would probably want like a starting lab work on your kidneys to see how they're functioning, especially if you're overweight. They could not be doing great. And then you're adding this drug on top of it. But again, that's just, I'm not a doctor, but I'm just saying, you know, so those are pretty much, so headaches, dehydration is another big one because they are not obviously drinking or eating enough, you know, to get in, you know, fluid really fills you up. So if you're not eating much and you're not able to drink much, and then, sometimes even malnutrition. We have to think about if you are not getting, and no one really thinks about that because they're just like, I'm skinny. I'm a skinny, malnourished person now. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So
now I have hormone imbalances. My hair's falling
right.
out. I have no libido.
Lost muscle mass. Yeah.
I have lost muscle mass.
And,
but that
yeah, and
scale says something.
right. Yeah. And actually hair loss is another side effect for some of them. Again, you know, these are all possible side effects. Some people get none of them. Some people get them. Again, the titrating up of the drug is what really kind of, you know, the slowing titrate up will prevent a lot of these complications or side effects because your body's slowly getting used to it. So it's working very closely with the doctor too, in a good doctor, because, you know, one that's just going to throw you with your injectable without any education, which is, I don't know. I don't really know how many doctors and how much education. The people I've talked to that are on it didn't get much education in from a nutrition and fitness standpoint of how to keep lean muscle mass on, you know, things like that. So it's going to be interesting to see. I know.
It breaks my heart. It does. It just,
I know. It's just, and this is why, like, it needs to be such a multidisciplinary approach to this, and it's just not there. So it's unfortunate.
And then the last one I just want to touch on again, because I really want to I've talked to a bunch of people about this, and I really want to just knock this point out of the park. Can you talk about weight loss sustainability once you stop taking Ozempic, just to go over one more time?
Yeah. We don't know what happens. So the majority of people, do gain the weight back, some more than they actually lost once they go off of the drug, because that obviously the drug itself mimics the hormone that inhibits that appetite. So once you go off of it, that appetite, that large appetite that you had, will come back, and you will start eating those large calories, and you will start to put the weight back on. How fast will you put it on? It depends. Obviously, it's going to depend on how many calories you eat, how often. So it could be, could gain a pound or two a week. Who knows? It depends. Now, some people, if they did work on lifestyle and diet modifications during that time, maybe it wouldn't go on as fast, or maybe the people who are on these medications call it food noise. So it's like the food noise or the appetite is increasing. You're going to start seeing it everywhere now that I said it. Yeah, you will. So they call it the food noise. So it's like sometimes towards the end of their week. So like their injectables on a Friday. So sometimes towards like Wednesday, Thursday, they start feeling more food noise. Like, hey, I'm more hungry than typical, because their injectables wearing off. So that they have that new injection on Friday. So that would happen if they went off of it, but it would just keep increasing because you're going to go completely off of it, which is why some doctors I know are trying to almost titrate them back down to a lower dose and like almost like test it out. Like, how's the food noise with this decrease, or how is the food noise if we do it every other week? Like, and I think, working on finding that plateau is because, again, you have to work up towards the highest dose, and then there's a highest dose, and then that's it. So once you're at the highest dose, you're going to hit that plateau, and that's essentially where you're going to stay. So does that
almost
then
like they're going to
mean
need a reverse diet coming out of it?
Correct.
Maybe that's got to be controlled.
But how do you convince someone that hasn't been eating anything and on a drug to increase their calories to get them to a healthy caloric intake?
Well, the thing is, they will eat it because their appetite's going to be back.
That's true.
And they can't control it because it's a mind thing, and they never got a therapist.
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
So
boy.
So the issue is, really, I think we need to work on the true issue, which is your disordered eating, your binge eating disorder, your eating disorder that then causes you to binge and purge, whatever that is, whatever eating disorder or disordered eating you have, relationship with food, you need to see someone. And that's not going to be fixed. All we're doing is putting a Band-Aid on your appetite. That's it. And then we're going to pull that Band-Aid off, and it's going to start bleeding again.
Yeah. Damn, that's a hell of an analogy there.
No,
it really was. I mean, if you want to wrap it all up and put a bow on it, I mean, that's pretty much, it's true. That's what it is. That's so true. It's just crazy to me. Like I said, that it's so, and like I said, we've been doing this so long. You see every couple of years, the next thing come out. The next thing comes out. And I think before it was kind of, now that you're seeing stuff that's like this, where it's like the FDA approves it and it's a weight loss drug, but it's like, yeah, but it's not for you. Like it's for it's for a certain demographic, not you. So stop buying it and, be more disciplined and make lifestyle changes, meet with a therapist if need be, and work with professionals if you want to see change. But like, it just amazes me the amount of people that I hear are taking it that don't really need to be taken.
Right.
Which in turn causes a shortage for people that need it. And you don't want to cause a shortage, because if you cause too much of a shortage for too long, you're going to see the price go up. And then it's, can you afford it? And then, oh man.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It's crazy. So it'd be interesting to see in the next few years what really happens, how many more people are on it. I don't know. I mean, and then it also messes with, all of a sudden you lost, 50 pounds, you're feeling great, and then you gain 60 pounds back. Well, that doesn't help you mentally either. And it's kind of like show prep. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're like, I look great. And then you have like this almost like depressive state of like, oh, I put some weight on. Like, essentially, I mean, really, if you think about it, it's pretty comparable, Yeah. And so it's a mental thing. And so I think that it's just, we're not doing this right.
Well, that's why there's people like us in the industry out there in the world trying to get this out across social media pages, because we want you guys to be educated on what is being put out on social media, and make sure you guys have the education behind it before you make these huge life-changing decisions.
Absolutely.
It can be done in a much safer way.
Yeah, that was a lot of info. That was awesome. And that really broke down, I mean, not only tips for people looking to lose weight and answering a bunch of questions, but explaining and giving people a better understanding of drugs like Ozempic, the pros, because there are pros, the cons, long-term sustainability, what you need to be pairing it up with while taking it, therapy and strategy you should use before taking it, and not just rushing into it. And I think that's, I mean, Rachel, thank you so much for coming on and talking about that. I mean, that was a lot of great information. If people want to get a hold of you, can you give them all the information to get a hold of you?
Yes. So you can go to my website, buffalodietitian.com. I am also on Instagram at buffalodietitian.com and Facebook at buffalodietitian.com. And there is on my website a contact form if you are interested in doing one-on-one. And yeah, I do all different types of things: weight loss, education, sports nutrition, eating disorders, diabetic education, you name it. We can talk about nutrition and try to help you out. I do take insurance. I take Blue Cross Blue Shield, Independent Health, and Univera. And then I also, I do take out-of-pocket payments. So, but yeah, I'm here to help you out.
At our website, you guys, it's fantastic.
Absolutely. She's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, hope you guys enjoyed the podcast, and we will catch you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.